Obviously, the first question in your mind that may have arisen when you first saw the video would have been, is hijab empowering? The answer is a resounding no. Nor are miniskirts, or tank tops, or bra, or in fact any clothing. The idea of linking clothing with empowerment has been a brainchild of the West. When you were young, you might have heard stories of brave men and women. The word brave referred to a group of people who fought against all odds to secure a deeply needed or meaningful victory. Of course, the term was used in the context of a sacrifice, for example, of life. With abundance, however, and a rising consumerist attitude, sacrifice in the West was just a story that you saw sometime in a tabloid of someone saving someone else at one particular time. There are no wars of any significance, and if there are, the use of artillery has made bravery a lot more redundant. What the West has adopted as a new measure of heroic display is boldness. The word bold is a strange word. It is obviously different in meaning than the word brave, but in ways that are not immediately clear. Unlike the term brave, bold is a term representing social triumph. It is a woman or a man standing against all social narrow minded stereotypes and doing something that is a taboo. The tabooer thing you did, the bolder you were. If you search for bold movies, Hollywood, the few topmost links you may get are. It is interesting why these links are about sex, though the search term was bold movies Hollywood. Almost none is about any type of social reform, though of course the term is used like that too. So let's try another search term. This time it is Bold Literature USA. The first result is from a site, Library of Congress. The book that is referred at the top for the time period from 1850 to 1900 is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. The book is a critique of the notions of purity and tries to portray the hypocrisy of the people who insist on that. The lead, who is a woman, is marked on her chest because of adultery, a strange punishment that does not seem to be exhibited that much in reality, while the husband, who is a pastor, is regarded highly. It is a strange situation because the laws around adultery have not generally spared either gender, and the idea that the guy is able to survive the punishment of shame because he is able to hide his affair is not a critique of society. For what is not known, how is it going to be punished? Yet the Scarlet Letter does exactly this, laying the foundation of the idea that the shame about adultery is worse than the act of adultery, because it is somehow sexist and apparently decreases the value of women. One of the other books that we see on the list from the next half century is Family Limitation by Margaret Sanger, published in 1914. As the World War I was being fought, women were distributing materials telling other women how to prevent a pregnancy and exercise their reproductive rights, forming a contrarian image to brave men fighting in the war, willing to lose their lives for the country. Were these women who were being bold and demanding that the country allowed them their fair share in the benefits of freedom, the price of which was being paid in blood. The boldness was seductive, and yet it was peaceful. The enemies were often imaginary, and when they were real, the societal norms which were criticized by either invoking the deep desires ingrained in human psyche or a representation of unfairness of the standard by glamorizing a story of partiality. The message, however, was clear. The humans would not be chained by the norms created by humans themselves. The internal struggle for freedom was going to be the basis of all society. The clothing was captured in it too. Imagine someone telling you that he feels empowered because he is wearing something different. What kind of power is that? Is it the power of knowledge, or of strength, or of acumen? It is the power of feeling special, feeling more wanted than the rest, by oneself or the others. The self is connected to the clothing, and the clothing to the freedom. Yet one may still say at this point that this itself is not bad. The clothing itself is related to personality, and the personality to the self. The expression of freedom is the empowerment of the highest order, a gift indeed, the fruit of a liberal society. Yes, but if that is really the case, Why this?
Something empowering, a symbol of empowerment. And thereby they go against social development and liberation and directly put an obstacle to the liberation of women who actually need to be freed.
The hijab was forced on me at the age of 9. You are to be a wrapped up, clean candy, as opposed to a dirty candy that is unwrapped and covered in flies and dirt. When I got older, I wanted to remove the hijab. When my family found out about this desire of mine, they threatened to kill me, and then they disowned me.
You know, you can support the right to do something without praising that certain thing, without telling everyone how amazing it is. You can say that people can be prostitutes if they want to be prostitutes, without becoming a prostitute yourself, or without declaring that prostitution is so amazing. You can support the right to adultery. You can say people shouldn't be punished for sleeping around with other people, without proposing that unfaithfulness, breaking the love and trust of your partner, was a wonderful thing to do. You can support a woman's right to stay at home, without proposing that obeying a husband who wants you to stay at home was a wonderful and empowering thing to do. And this is about what the hijab is about. Why do people think the hijab is a thing? Because women came up with the idea that covering themselves up was a productive practice that brought them closer to Allah? Because women thought not showing themselves to the public would make them feel safer, and that somehow became a thing all around the world, regardless of any scripture, and people just followed it all around the world. That sounds great, but no. The hijab became a thing ever since the Quran ordered women to veil themselves and to hide themselves in public from men. This was ordered in at least 2 Quran verses, one of them clearly saying that believing women have to cover their adornments, which stands for the beauties of a woman's body, and to draw their veils or headscarves over their bosoms. In another verse, Muhammad is told to tell all women of the believers, the Quran usually speaks to men, not to women directly, to cover themselves with veils, so they are recognized and not molested. This means that these women need to be recognized as believing women, and it should be clear that since they are veiled, they are not available to immoralities like flirtations and stares by men, that they can't be approached and drooled over by the horny men of 7th century Arabia, because only whores and slaves, by big scholar Ibn Kathir's definition, are like that. Notice what this means. This strong religion could simply tell men to be respectful with women and to strictly abstain from such practices. But no, it gives men the higher authority, since men enforce Islamic law, and orders women to cover up in order to be moral. This is not about protecting women. It is about forcing the precaution on women, because women can be pushed around easier and ordered to do something. Telling men to just keep it together was not convenient to the founders of Islam.
Here apostate prophet is arguing against flirtations and stares. And this culminates into him asking a question from Muslims. Why didn't Allah ask men to control themselves? This is a curiously posed question because there are no videos where apostate prophet has slammed flirtation before. If apostate prophet and the denizens of the West really consider flirtation so bad, the God of Muslims should have commanded that such be unacceptable, though it kind of is in Muslim societies. Would not that still condemn men and women of the West? Do we really see anti-flirtation movements in the West? Or these are just an attempt to somehow still keep up the false banner that it is not about what it is about? It seems because apostate prophet does not only condemn flirtation indirectly, but also stares. This is a cute stand. Is staring a woman who is exposed to some extent wrong because lusting after women is wrong? If that is the case, Westerners will find it hard to explain all the porn, all the sports magazines, and even quite a few video games. But maybe it is about real women or women in real encounters. But that stands in contrast to the practice of having cheerleaders, grid girls, and even fashion shows for women with a swimsuit round. But maybe all of that is someone else's fault. The presence of cheerleaders and grid girls and swimsuit rounds have nothing to do with lust and sexual attraction. People who think that must be perverts. There is functional reason for their presence. They are not obviously being paid to be looked at in the former two cases, and being an ideal woman by showing off their bodies in the latter case. The Allah should have forced men to control their eyes. Controlling what someone can look at and what someone cannot look at is apparently more progressive than controlling what someone wears. And it is also not the case that women dress a certain way to be looked at. The myth of models in bikini on cover of sports magazines or women wearing choicest clothing at cultural events, contrasted with clothing of men, and presence of hot women for the purposes of making an event more successful are just myths. That never happens in the West. For example, people in the West clearly did not make an actress reach top height just because she pretended showing an area close to her. For lack of a better word, cunt. The people were not staring. It must really be the art that gathered their attention. So I did a thing. I searched for a UK news outlet, a prominent one. I went to the sidebar and see what I found. Some of these headlines are interesting. One of them reads, Model flaunts her incredible curves and peachy posterior in a tiny teal bikini for Tunisia photo shoot. Another interesting one goes like this. Rosie Huntington Whitley sets pulses racing as she flaunts her enviable figure in a series of sizzling lingerie selfies. Another one is, That's disgusting. Country star Casey Musgraves is left furious after fans encourage her to do a shoey at her Sydney concert. Shoe is kind of a degenerate thing. But there are another. Abby Champion shows off her lady frame in series of saucy ensembles as she sizzles in shoot. Another one. Halsey shows serious skin in all black ensemble, including biker jacket and tiny shorts while out to dinner in Los Angeles. But one of the most interesting ones go like this. They're about BAFTAs TV 2019. Maya Jama flashes her underwear in a busty, sheer tessered gown as she leaves the after party. And the second one, kind of similar. Rochelle Humes flashes her underwear in plunging black tie split gown. I mean, look at all this. Clearly, even though these are on the sidebar, no Brit is watching it, especially those who are not Muslims. Because staring is bad, and making a permanent copy of these women who are a little exposed, which can be stared back for eternity, should be worse. And obviously, the photographer did not know he was snapping these things up. He clicked the pictures, and then someone put down a little culturally revealing headline. And of course, none of these women wish to be stared. Do you think that the woman who wears a dress with a low cut gown intentionally wants people to see her cleavage? How new? Of course, it is not staring or flirting which is the problem. Unless, of course, people in the West really think like Gillette. Because you can still criticize others while choosing a curious position for displaying your logo. Gillette is obviously targeting Muslims here. No Westerner will ever look at a woman's butt for so long that it would be a good advertisement location. So, what is the issue here? Is it immorality of stares? Is it immorality of flirtation? Surely, then we can get a definitive statement from the West. But it is not that, it is something else, which apostate prophet thankfully shares with us.
That they can't be approached and drooled over by the horny men of 7th century Arabia, because only whores and slaves, by big scholar Ibn Kathir's definition, are like that. Notice what this means. This strong religion could simply tell men to be respectful with women and to strictly abstain from such practices.
It is the respect. The point of apostate prophet is that if you see a woman in some clothing that seems sexual enough, push your respect bar up to the maximum. Because remember, women are not garbage. This is surprising to me because it is not that people in the West don't judge you on your clothing. In fact, if they did not, there would be no formal clothing required in offices. Does the West really want us to believe that they never judge anyone based on how they are dressed? And what's up with the garbage analogy? If horny men really considered women they felt attracted to as garbage, would not they not be attracted to them? Or is it some suggestion that Muslims like to have sex with garbage? Why does not the analogy make sense? Well, the answer is simple. The fact is that the West justifies all this degeneracy by forcing people to respect women. You can never critique someone if the culture makes you respect them as a norm. In order to compensate for the obvious truth of the self-objectification of women, the Western mindset responds to it by addition of extra respect. This is why imagine this is perfectly respectable at a major event. You don't agree? Well, that means you don't respect the woman enough. That means you must be a horny rapist. By the way, compare it with the dress of men at BAFTA. So what is happening? Is it the extra respect which is the reason for this, or is it something more reasonable? Maybe something related to commodification of women's bodies. Hey, but as long as you just sneak a glimpse, it is okay. It is staring that is bad. Allah should have really set a time limit rule to differentiate between respectful Westerners and Muslims that might be rapists. However, even if one is free not to respect women, because apparently right to wear what you like is less important than right to choose whom to respect, the biggest question remains, shouldn't molestation still be wrong? And the answer seems to be yes, because it involves touching, which could be viewed as aggression. And staring is not aggression, and not respecting is not an aggression, and flirting is also not aggression. But wait, molestation is not punished as aggression. It is punished under inappropriate touching. In fact, no sexual crime is punished under physical assault. They have a specific and separate category, which looks at the sexual nature and extent of the assault. But that is strange, because if indeed one really accepts that women's bodies are inherently not sexual, that women are not like candies, how can one reintroduce that criteria while punishing someone? Why a sexual touch is worse than a normal touch, assuming both are non consensual? Isn't breast just deposits of fat? And if indeed such is assumed to be sexual, would it not be proof of West's acceptance of sexuality in public? Won't that point out a reason for difference in Islamic attitude? Well, it could be. Let's see what apostate prophet says about it.
Oh, you can support the right to do something without praising that certain thing, without telling everyone how amazing it is. You can say that people can be prostitutes if they want to be prostitutes, without becoming a prostitute yourself, or without declaring that prostitution is so amazing. You can support the right to adultery. You can say people shouldn't be punished for sleeping around with other people, without proposing that unfaithfulness, breaking the love and trust of your partner, was a wonderful thing to do. You can support a woman's right to stay at home, without proposing that obeying a husband who wants you to stay at home was a wonderful and empowering thing to do.
Right to prostitution, right to adultery, and right to stay at home. What is common amongst all? They all are primarily given for the benefit of women. Of course, though, men would be treated fair in the West. It would not be that it is just the opposite of Islam, to some extent, right? What about jailing men who cannot pay for child support and taking their house?
Mr. Kennick, I'm going to commit you to the House of Corrections in lieu of $4,500 cash bail. If the cash bail is paid, then that would be set over towards the arrearage due for the child support. If the $4,500 cash bail is not paid, you would be held, and I will schedule a further hearing, a further show cause hearing in this matter in 30 days. If you are still...
Your Honor, what would a show cause hearing do? How would I possibly be able to pay them? Do you take me in jail?
Sir, if you are incarcerated, I will have another show cause hearing in 30 days to review the incarceration. Sir, if you want to address the court, you have to stand, please. Thank you.
If you throw me in jail, how would I possibly? What's the show cause hearing going to say? Did you tell me in jail that I haven't paid? Because how am I supposed to pay when I'm in jail?
We will address the next show cause hearing at the next show cause hearing, sir. Right? You are in custody. The court officers will direct you.
So you're going to hold me for ransom for $4,500?
And the hearing is closed, sir. Okay, you are in custody.
We're being ransomed for $4,500.
Off the
I
record.
am pro se, so the court has now locked up my lawyer. I need access to the internet and a computer.
We're
And
off the record.
And what about being jailed for not supporting a child that is not yours?
Carnell Alexander walked into the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice knowing in moments he could lose his freedom.
I stayed up all night, couldn't sleep, thinking about it.
Carnell is a wanted man because he refuses to do what the state orders and pay child support for a child that DNA tests prove isn't his, a child he doesn't even know.
I haven't even had a chance to really speak to him, except for one time when we took the DNA test.
Nonetheless, right now, under the law, he's a deadbeat dad.
What about divorce alimony? Why should someone pay someone else if there is a divorce? Does the right to retain the money you earn through your hard work also feature somewhere in the list of the West? Can wife and children get more money than you can earn? Well, if they hadn't separated, they would not. It is interesting to note that the West's basic standard is not equality. For if it were so, men would not have such a hard time in courts. But also, if men in the West really treated women like they treat men, why would women be sexualized to a much greater extent? Something about which feminists have complained for years. Where are the impeccable, non horny Western men who treat women with respect, that they would not rule over them? The West's basic standard is preventing oppression of women. That is why when women want to experiment with their sexuality, preventing them is wrong because it is oppression. The argument given is that except for private parts and most probably nipples, women's bodies are not inherently sexual, which is forgotten while considering punishment. Suddenly, then, the normal skin becomes endowed with magical properties, and mostly in one direction, and that lies seen in interesting places. For example, in CPR. CPR may involve mouth to mouth touching and pressing on chest. Ideally, breast really is okay and mature enough not to consider either lips or breasts of women as sexual. It is worth remembering that lips are on face, which hijab covers. That there would be no problem in giving CPR because without they being inherently sexual, sexual abuse through them is impossible. But is that what really happens? The hilarious thing is that women are candies in both the societies. The West likes the uncovered ones, while the Islam suggests that covered ones are better. Of course, the West does offer more freedom to the woman, not because it respects freedom in itself. If it did, there would be no such thing as inappropriate touching, because that is inherently subjective standard. There would be no ripping apart of men in courts and no problem in looking where you like, and rape would be classified under physical assault. Islam is more oppressive. West is more degenerate. Islam is more violent. West perpetuates a lie for convenience. And Islam does not care about women too much. West does not care about men. In fact, there is an observable difference in jury conviction, guilty pleas, sentencing, and the probability of receiving the harshest possible sentence in favor of women in Western courts. The West is, however, dealing with another problem, which is far bigger: female teachers committing statutory rape against their pupils. Leading child psychologist Dr. Michael Oberschneider of Ashburn Psychological Services had to say this about the increasing incidents. As a nation, we are over sexualizing things, he told Mail Online. Our primetime shows are becoming very graphic. We have TV shows that encourage cougars. They are saying, isn't it a wonderful idea for older women? Now we can just hope Apostate Prophet or other guys will call it blaming the media. Cannot women control themselves and not get horny around boys? And what it has to do with films? Just because films show statutory rape, does that mean women think raping boys is okay? I wonder what the West is doing about it. Surely it won't just give probation to the offenders or declare the law itself as unconstitutional. Oh, wait, the Queen's gym teacher who had sex with two underage students won't face any jail time as long as she completes a year of mental health treatment? Joy Morsi, 40, pleaded guilty in Queen's Supreme Court Friday to one count each of rape and criminal sexual act charges and will have to attend an outpatient program for a diagnosed depressive disorder, according to Queen's DA's office. The married mom of four will then receive 10 years probation following completion and will have to register as a sex offender. Lindsay Jarvis, 29, was caged for 18 months for raping the 15-year-old in a series of clandestine trysts. Jarvis admitted having sex with the teen after grooming him by text and was jailed for 30 months at the end of last year. She claims that she was made to understand she would be quickly eligible for an early release because she finished a sex offender treatment program, before she was sentenced in December, court documents say. Another case, a former teacher who was found guilty of having sex with her 16-year-old student won't receive prison time. Instead, Nikki Sherwitz will receive 10 years of probation and a fine of $5,000. It looks like it is an appropriate punishment for rape. Laura Lynn Cross, 36, is accused of grooming the boy from when he was just 14 with invitations to play in her swimming pool. Cross was an English teacher at a high school in the town of Akron, is alleged to have had a 3-year affair with the boy between August 2013 and September 2016. But the most important ones are these. Alabama high school teacher and cheerleading coach who had sex with two of her students has charges dropped because the judge thinks that the law is unconstitutional. Another, Thai mother who filmed herself strangling her son with a rope to punish her husband after she feared he was unfaithful is allowed to keep her child and will not be prosecuted. It is interesting why Westerners are so much caring about what is happening in Islamic countries when they have their own stuff to deal with. And the stuff in Thailand, which is kind of a Buddhist country. It makes sense for apostate prophet to criticize Islam because he is an ex-Muslim. But most Westerners or Indians in the comment section aren't. But there is one thing happening side by side, and that is the most important. Men are realizing that all of this is not equality or principles, but just feminism, which the West loves. Women obeying men is bad. Men getting jailed for not being able to pay alimony or child support is good. Apparently, poverty is a crime. Apparently, not having a job is a crime. Apparently, losing a job is a crime. Men are merely tools of the Western liberalism and progressivism, and that is why so many of them are staying out and not giving a damn about what is happening. The video is not a defense of hijab or a defense of Western thoughthery. It is intended to merely mock Western degeneracy and foresee the closing demise of the West. Gear up. This is going to be an interesting ride.